Jean Piaget. If you know anything about developmental psychology, you know his name. He's an absolute giant. For decades, his work was the go-to for understanding how a child's mind works. But, science moves on. Theories get tested. So, the big question is, how does this work really stack up today? Let's get into it.
You've probably seen this, right? A kid who is super bright in so many ways just gets completely stuck on a problem that, to you, seems totally obvious. Well, that's exactly the kind of mystery Piaget dedicated his life to. He wanted to draw the map, the very architecture of a mind as it grows.
And for a very long time, his work was the blueprint. He was the original architect, the first person to give us this incredible, comprehensive look at how a child's ability to think and reason and solve problems actually evolves over time.
So what made his blueprint so incredibly revolutionary? Well, it was this core idea that kids aren't just little adults who know less stuff. No, their minds actually work in fundamentally different ways, and they grow through a series of distinct, predictable stages.
Piaget's model was really built on a few key pillars. First, he said kids are active explorers. They're not just sitting there waiting to be filled with information. Second, they build these things he called schemes, kind of like mental folders or frameworks for understanding the world. And third, and this is the really big one, he proposed they move through 4 specific stages, each with its own unique way of thinking.
So the absolute cornerstone of his original blueprint was this. A child had to reach a certain stage of biological development before they could learn specific concepts. You couldn't teach a 5-year-old abstract algebra, right? Their brain just wasn't ready. In his mind, development had to pave the way for learning to happen.
But like any great historic building, Piaget's foundation was going to get stress tested by all the researchers who came after him. And as they started poking and prodding, a few cracks began to show.
The main question that kept coming up was about those stages. Is a child's entire way of thinking really locked into one single stage at a time? Or could it be that their abilities are a bit more flexible, more varied than Piaget first thought?
And this really gets to the heart of the challenge. Piaget's view is that development was this broad, overarching limit. But later research started showing something really interesting. Kids could actually pull off tasks from higher stages if you just simplify the problem a little, or if it was about something they already knew a lot about. Turns out they were way more competent than he'd given them credit for.
And we're not talking about a small difference here. The scale was just staggering. In one study, there was this complex task that only about 19% of kids in the formal operational stage could pass. But when they simply made the instructions clearer, an incredible 98% of them solved it. From 19 to 98%. That's a game changer.
A result like that doesn't just question a little detail, it shakes the whole foundation. It was pointing to a huge factor that Piaget's very strict stage theory might have really overlooked.
And that factor was experience. This quote just says it all. Researchers found that even adults don't operate in one single stage. College students, for example, could think at a super high, abstract level about stuff related to their major, but give them a problem from a totally different field and they might go right back to basic, trial-and-error thinking.
So the takeaway is just inescapable, isn't it? Experience, training, just being familiar with something, it has a profound impact on how you think. And that directly challenges that old idea that development must always come before learning.
Okay, so does this mean we just bulldoze Piaget's entire theory? Not at all. Instead, what happened was a new school of thought came along to renovate it. These were the Neo-Piagetians.
Now, what the Neo-Piagetians did was really smart. They didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. They kept the brilliant core ideas from Piaget, but they updated the blueprint. They started to incorporate all these other factors that we now know are critical, things like experience, culture, and social interaction.
So their renovation brought in some huge new ideas. For one, they argued that development isn't about being in one giant stage. It's much more specific to the task at hand. They also showed that things like training and just talking with other people can actually speed up development. And crucially, they recognized that our culture plays a massive role in shaping how we think.
And they didn't stop where Piaget did with teenagers. They actually extended the map of development into adulthood, proposing these fascinating new stages of thinking that help us deal with the messy, complex problems of adult life, like figuring out what the right problem is to solve,
or understanding that sometimes there just isn't one simple answer.
So, after all the critiques, all the revisions, all the renovations, where does that leave our original architect, Jean Piaget? Well, his work is still an undeniable landmark. You can see its influence everywhere, especially in our schools.
Seriously, walk into almost any modern classroom, and you are stepping into a building that was built on a Piagetian foundation. The way we approach teaching and learning today has been profoundly, deeply shaped by his original insights.
3 of his ideas are just central to how we do things now. First, this whole concept of developmentally appropriate education, matching what we teach to where a kid is at cognitively. Second, the absolute importance of active hands-on learning. And third, just understanding that real learning, it's not about memorizing formulas, it's about a much deeper process of making sense of the world. So in the end, yeah, the building of knowledge has been extensively renovated. It's got new wings, modern features, all of that. But that original foundation that Piaget laid, it's still there. It's solid, it's essential, and it's still supporting everything that's been built on top of it.
And maybe that's the real beauty of science. Piaget gave us the first great map. It wasn't perfect, sure, but it gave us a whole new world to explore. And ever since, we've just been filling in the details, correcting the coastlines, and pushing into totally new territory. Which just leaves you wondering, right? What new continents of the mind are we going to discover next?